Now, things are heading, things are going on, right? There's some shaking, rocking, rattling, and rolling in the middle of the country. Kansas experienced a 5-point earthquake, 5.0 on the Richter scale earthquake. You got volcanoes kind of getting angry. Angry. The earth is angry. And no, it's not Greta Thunberg. No, it's not nothing that she says. No. Here with me, as usual, on Tuesday, every Tuesday night, Stan Deyo from StanDeyo.com. What a guy. The real Indiana Jones. I know many of you remember listening to him on Art Bell. Oh, you talk about some great days, right? I miss Art Bell. I know Stan Deyo misses Art Bell. But some great radio days. What a storyteller, what a great host Art was. But what an incredible, informative man Stan Deyo was and is. Here to talk about whatever he wants to talk about is Stan Deyo. StanDeyo.com. Go there and show images as well. And also bookmark Stan Deyo. Why? Because, hey, news headlines. Ollie works very hard to put them up and get them out there. Things that you should read. And also Patreon. Support Stan on Patreon. Stan, how you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm doing well, thank you. Can you hear me?
We can. I can.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't know whether I had that connected yet or not. Been trying to solve a little image problem here on my show images page. Boy, there's a lot of stuff happening out there.
Yes.
A lot.
Yes. Which the question I have for you all the time is, where do you want to start? Because it seems like you can go any. I mean, pick a spot, pick a topic.
All right. Well, one thing I want to get out of the way here again is about General Qasem Soleimani, slide 58 on my show images page. What I've done, I've linked this text to a Google search so that people can go and look for body doubles and how many world leaders, in Korea and Europe, England, the United States, how many world leaders have used body doubles? And that's like a person they've taken and trained and groomed, physically to look and act like the real person. You could see all those different links. I couldn't put them all up. They're just too many, but it gives you an idea that the concept of using a body double in the Middle East, particularly in North Korea and various other places, is essential in these times because the attempts on the life of these leaders would be multitudes from their enemies and even from their, domestic enemies. So I'm wondering, did they do this with Qasem Soleimani, the guy in the picture, the general that was killed over in Iraq a few days ago by President Trump's action? Now, I put that up there so you can go and look and start collecting pictures of Qasem Soleimani, particularly headshots. Because in 2015, in Aleppo there, he was in the midst of an attack. Both sides were fighting each other. And he went down with a slight head wound. So the rumors were. But then they said, well, he's dead. He hasn't appeared on the internet or news or anything for weeks. But then mysteriously, he reappeared bit by bit, a photo here, a photo there over the next month after that. And so if you get older pictures of him, before 2015, headshots, head pictures, so you can record the key identifiers of him, the scar under the left eye, one next to the right eye, the kind of like a mole up between his eyes, up in his brow, forehead there in the middle there. There are other things that keep for reference in the future should magically Qasem Soleimani reappear alive in Iran. And this is, I still think this is a possibility because this guy is just so clever tactically, militarily, strategically, that he could have had a body double made. And that body double may have been who was killed in Iraq, because putting himself over there in Iraq, that close to American forces, knowing that he was being tracked, he violated one of his own rules. If this was in truth Soleimani himself there in Iraq, normally he travels in an airplane full of people that are innocents to keep him safe, because world government would shoot down a plane with him on it and all the innocent young people and stuff he had on there on the flight with him. But he was off of the flight and down in the vehicles with his lead generals. I mean, everybody that was anybody there in the military and in part of the Iranian government was in that convoy of cars, 2 or 3 of them. Now, I just can't see Soleimani making a mistake like that, putting himself and so many of his leaders at risk. Now, himself, he could have had a body double for him, maybe not body doubles for the rest of his people in the cars. So when or if Soleimani does reappear, I suspect that he will have wounds on his head, probably surgically implanted or otherwise, to make him look like he survived the attack magically somehow. So this is a long shot from Stanley, but it's something that I feel, knowing this character and how he's behaved in the past and how smart he is, he could have done this. So just keep an eye on him. That's just for, later times.
If I can chime in here on something, I don't know whether you saw this. The New York Times, the day of that hypersonic missile attack against Soleimani, the New York Times published this opinion piece hours before the actual attack happened. The headline, the op-ed, was "Hypersonic Missiles Are a Game Changer." And that was by Quincy Institute analyst and former NSC senior director Steve Simon. And it was the exact way that this attack, or this, the attack that took out Soleimani occurred, was spelled out in the New York Times, which was released hours before the attack itself. And the reason I bring this up is because of what you said last week, and I learned about this here probably 4 days ago. This was published on the 4th of January. So, or the report about the New York Times, that is, by way of Fox News. So, you could be right, which, wow.
That would unify the Arab world, the Muslim world, like crazy.
Yeah.
Even Saudi Arabia, Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who's been at war with Soleimani and Iran, because they're a different breed of Islam. They're terrorists. A lot of them are terrorists. They're Shiites. So all of a sudden now, then Mohammed bin Salman says, "Well, look, maybe," he says this to Trump, "maybe we ought to kind of lay back, and not hit Iran too hard right now. Let's make peace." So he's in fear of losing more of his oil fields, because he's got a listing of his Aramco shares, $2 trillion worth, going up on the exchange. So from being, an avid enemy of Soleimani and Iran, he suddenly is backtracked and trying to make peaceful thing. You make nice there with the Iranians for personal gain, I'm sure, for personal reasons for him and for his country. But you can see how quickly his allegiances shift.
Right.
And he's supposed to be our friend and Israel's friend and everything now. So it's another character, another reason to look at this character and say, watch out. He's a liar. He's a deceiver. And so keep your eye on Mohammed bin Salman, too.
Okay.
Oh, boy. Hey, I guess you have already talked about Dr. Van Impe, Jack Van Impe. And,
no, let's discuss that. I was kind of hanging back because I saw what you have on your show images page.
Well, all right. Well, it's on page or slide 60 about his passing, and it links you over to their website. I followed his ministry for years and years, like a lot of people, surely, looking at his take on prophecy and scripture and his encouragements to people over various issues in his ministry. And Rexella, his wife, they did the show together, a wonderful couple. And I think his passing, we had him, we had Chuck Misligo not long ago, Stan Monteith. There have been a number of the kind of watchmen are way up on the towers on the wall, with the long view up there. And seeing them all pass now tells me, or makes me feel anyway, that the tribulation period is at the doorstep. I mean, Billy Graham is gone. All these things have happened the last few years, and it's shaping up to be the time that we expect. And with the actions in the Middle East with Iran and I forget which country it is pressuring Trump to go ahead and institute his peace plan in the Middle East. In fact, it may be one of the cabinet members there in the Israeli cabinet, but they want that peace plan to be put in place now because it looks as though the United States has poked a stick at the hornet's nest over there by hitting the Iranian general. The next move could be, as stated by the Iranians now, they're going to retaliate in a strong fashion, a manly fashion, they say, against the United States for this attack. So we're on the verge of a nuclear exchange and some very serious wounds to the United States and other countries in the region. This is a perfect time to cry, let's make peace, not war, and let's have a peace treaty. It may go a bit further before that cry is answered with the release of the Trump peace plan there, but it's got to be soon. I mean, things are about to pop, and it could get a little bit worse, a nuclear exchange or a nuclear attack from the United States or from Iran somewhere, and that would then put the icing on the cake and say, let's have the peace treaty. Let's institute it now to avoid World War III, because that's how it would escalate. So, that's all popped to my mind when I saw that Dr. Van Impe had passed, and what a wonderful ministry he had for so many years. He was a kind man.
It's interesting how the dots are connecting and it's seemingly lining up here, with the end of the days. And wow. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Wow.
Yeah. Okay. Now, slide 59, just before that one there, is about Dr. Patrick Michaels, who is the director of the Center for Study of Science at the Cato, CATO Institute. Now, he was on an interview there with Mark Levine, and he was talking about the various reports on global warming and climate change and that kind of stuff. And I forget the term he used. Oh, yeah. He said that the majority of these reports, in fact, not all of them, parameterized various key factors in determining where the world heat would go, and how it would all be terrible. And what he meant by parameterized was this. There are complex mathematical models which have a lot of variables to try to determine where the world's weather is going to go. And, over the next 10, 15, 20 years, climate forecasting. Well, there are certain things there they based on parameters that were back in the 1990s that they collected. And there were some of them that there's no data for, but you had to have some kind of data to plug the equation. So they would fudge it. And parameterize is another word for fudging a factor, a variable in your equation. And there were numerous of these factor changes, lies in essence, guesses, in all the models for climate change that they used. Now, if you listen to that interview, you'll see that they've got curves showing the various forecast methods and what is actually happening now. And what is actually happening is lower curve rises than the projected one, which is an angle like that. It's a very, very informative lecture from a man who does know his business. And right underneath that picture 59, the slide 59 is slide 56. And that is a picture of Patrick Michaels, Dr. Michaels. And if you click on that, you can read his whole article, see all the graphs about these variations in actual versus projected by all these other guys. His projections aren't quite as dire. There you go. That's the site. I scroll down on that. I'm not sure if the graph is in that article or not.
No.
It's certainly in the video, down about quarter of the way through, I think it is. Anyway, well worth studying from a scientific point of view, from a scientist. And I sat there glued to what he was saying and read the various papers he's written on this, and I think the man is right. Global warming is definitely, as he states in the video, it's not due to human activity and CO2 production by living things, because at the turn of 1900s there in the 20th century, the rise in temperature stuff had nothing to do with CO2 levels, because we didn't have automobiles and factories and that kind of stuff producing the CO2. So very good points, and I think it's a very strong argument to use for people that claim that we need to set up a new world order to control the climate and gas emissions from human endeavor.
Yes.
Anyway, that.
Wow. Okay.
Now, on that line there, again, 53, slide 53 underneath the 56 slide there, you see a thing that says Australia is getting hotter, and it's showing a plot of the temperatures over, I think it's from 1910 to 2018. And you can see that the temperatures were all kind of cool, basically, for 2/3 of that graph. And then suddenly, in the last, 15, 20 years, the heat index has gone way up. Now, as Dr. Michael says in his video there with Mark Levine, there has been a global mean, average type temperature rise in the whole planet of 0.9 degrees Celsius. Now, it sounds like a small amount of temperature increase, but this is an average of all the hot, cold, whatever on the planet, and a temperature shift of 2 degrees, not 0.9, but a shift of 2 degrees centigrade for an average or mean temperature of the planet can mean entering into an ice age versus entering into a blistering heat age. So when it's rising like this, we're at 0.9. If we get up to 2.0, we've got real problems, worse than we've got, now. And with all the fires down in Australia, this is just one example of the drought, the change in the climate, the less water being there for the Australians, and then these fires being ignited. Now, they were helped along, admittedly, by terrorists, some 200 people they've arrested so far, for starting fires in various forests on the East Coast. And it's mainly the East Coast of Australia that's been hit by all these fires. But another sign of global, quote-unquote, warming. Now, I link all that myself, the majority of this, back to behavior of the sun, because you can plot ice ages and you can plot heat ages, if you wish, back through several 100,000 years on the current timing graph anyway, back to the sun as the causal medium causing all these changes in the global climate. Now, that does produce drought, which is in the forecast in the book of Revelation by John. You're going to see starvation, famine, this kind of stuff. And heat like that, and also flooding, believe it or not, causes crop damage, crop shortages, and a great number of people on Earth depend on food and water to stay alive. So these are impact factors that we've got to look at.
Wow.
Now, the slide 47 is called coronal mass ejections and their increasing threat moving forward. And if you get over to that article, it addresses the fact that CMEs are getting more frequent, coronal mass ejections, in other words, and superheated flares coming from the sun. With these things happening, we've been in a state here in the low, the low trough of sunspot activity, where we had many days of no sunspots at all in the sun. We're now climbing into the next solar cycle, and the actions that I'm seeing and others are that it's already ahead of what you would think it would be for a normal solar cycle as far as CMEs and sunspots appearing. They're a little bit early, and I've stressed this for a long time. Watch the solar activity. Right now, the sun's north magnetic pole is inverting, is flipping upside down. Now, on the sun, there are two sets of north poles and south poles inside the sun, and sometimes there are three. The two strongest groups are such that the south pole at this time has flipped and become the same polarity as the north pole used to be on the sun. And you can see in the magnetic graphs that I showed last week that the new north pole for the sun is formed about midway between the equator and the north pole of the sun, and will move up there and complete the circuit. So now you have a north at the top and a south at the bottom of the sun. But Earth, and I don't know how many other planets, but Earth has at least two sets of north-south poles in it. And I think that what we see is kind of a free-floating set of inversions or flips of the south pole, the Earth, and the north pole. So in other words, on our Earth's north pole, there would be a south pole to it down at the equator. and our south pole would have a north pole to it up at the equator inside the planet. That's when it's stable. But NASA's modeling of our temperature and the magnetic fields inside the planet Earth show that there are, at this point in time, 3 sets of north-south poles floating around and starting to drift from their stable position. The North Pole is drifting faster than the South Pole. And this, part of what is happening with the ice melt up in Greenland and the Arctic Circle is due to the energy, the heat energy coming up from the core of the planet through the North Pole region up there and melting the ice, heating the water around there. But also, as in slide 52, there are volcanoes on the southwest tip of Antarctica down in the South Pole, which are heating up the ice there and melting it, causing a slow sea rise, which could get quicker as time passes. My study is also on gravitational theory and how it works, gravitational mechanics for a planet, does show that the north and south poles of a planet will periodically enlarge or decrease to the point that physically there may be a breach of the crust there going down into the core of the planet or just to the mantle level, which in the case of the North Pole would be releasing the heat energy that's causing the melt. Now, at the South Pole, to see these volcanoes becoming active and melting the ice flow, or the ice on Antarctica, tells me that the plate tectonics, if you want to call it that, the borders between the plates that are home to the various continents, and these things are stressing and starting to let magma come up into these areas that have been typically cold. So that is showing heat trying to escape in Antarctica, and I'm wondering myself if we're not going to see a hot spot like near the Russian Vostok station, I think it is, where it melts right up through there, and we might actually see an opening back into the mantle, like at the North Pole, same thing down the South Pole. This may be part of the prophecies where you have a pit opened up into the earth and things come flying up out of it to, offend, to strike mankind, to annoy mankind. Anyway, these are things that are actually happening as far as the movements of the plates and the volcanic action increase all across the planet. But I kind of tend to think that they're starting to fit in with prophecy, revealing prophecy about what they're doing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's amazing how things are coming together today. Just as when we first started doing this, things were lining up. Now they're actually in motion and coming together a lot more than I ever thought, a lot quicker than I thought they would. So you're right, and that's very interesting about Antarctica.
Well, I'm sure you've been kind of seeing the notices come across if you put a tag in Google, whatever, volcanoes, that we've been having some real serious activity increase in strong volcanic action in Indonesia, Philippines, various places around the planet, including what I was talking about there at Antarctica. Now, I'll talk about it in a minute, but there's what's called the Taal, Taal volcano, and we want to discuss that because it may erupt in the next few days into like a super volcano in its area, which we will all feel the results of, and certainly will affect crops by putting up a lot of high ash in the upper atmosphere, reducing the amount of sunlight that our crops get. And this strange weather that we've had for the last 2 or 3 years is getting worse as far as it's hotter and drier in many places that produce crops, and it's stunting crop growth. You're not getting as much or as big a crop, like the plants themselves are not mature as quick in the normal growing seasons. There are just a lot of things all coming together.
Let me ask you about that, because I'm sure someone's going to say, well, last year my tomatoes, they were huge and my watermelons were huge. And so how do you respond to people who say, I'm not having any problems? Well, I'm not trying to make fun of anyone. I'm just asking.
No, yeah, I know. I've gotten emails about that question. It's the same thing. And the climate of the planet is not wide, like equal all over the planet. Never has been. You've had like equatorial regions and crop seasons there, and semi-polar regions, in between the two. But when the magnetic axis of the planet starts to tilt like it is, North Pole is deviating like crazy, 35 miles a year towards Siberia. This is altering the growing bands, and so you will have people that get better crops and people that have no change, and then people that have drastic changes, temperature-wise, rainfall-wise, things like that. So, yeah, if you're in one of the lucky zones where you're getting bumper crops, good on you. Grow a lot more because we're going to need it.
Okay.
And on the magnetic field issue, what slide is it here? Let me just see. That's slide 54, where it talks about violent solar storms are happening closer to Earth than anyone else thought was possible. Now, when they say solar storms, we have a solar wind, particles being ejected from the sun and kind of like a Catherine wheel, like spirals, spinning around like this and spreading solar particles at high speed around the solar system in the equatorial or ecliptic plane. Now, when our Earth's magnetic field starts to weaken, it allows the trailing magnetic field behind the Earth as it moves in its orbit to stretch. And that stretched magnetic field, occasionally a filament of the magnetic field will break, disconnect, and then it will snap back in what's called a reconnection event and produce a really big thump in the magnetic field of Earth from the backward side of our planet, from how we're moving around the sun, the opposite direction. And it'll warp it back into our whole magnetic field and cause solar storms and aurorae that you can see a picture of there in 2017. And that was the one you got on the screen. So our field is weakening very rapidly. It's drifting because of the instability of the field, and we are more and more exposed to solar wind events. A burp out there in the sun and the solar wind comes our way. We're not going to be able to defend ourselves or block it off. The magnetic field won't block it off as easily and as completely as it has in the past. It's like in Star Trek. Our shields are weakening. They're down to 20%, mate, and that's it. And it's weakening very rapidly now. So we're going to see surprises like this auroral display, and it creates something like in the areas where it's affected on the planet, like a miniature EMP strike on that area of the planet. It's like a rubber band snapping back and releasing all this magnetic energy, which produces a miniature localized EMP event, or several of them at the same time. Just another thing to put in your holy cow bucket,
Yeah. And everything we've talked about, these are all interconnecting, interwoven, even force multiplying events, aren't they? I mean, everything's connected.
Yeah. With the weather changes, like with rainfall after a lot of drought, East Africa, particularly Ethiopia, but surrounding areas there, are developing locust swarms. Look at slide 44. There are two links there. There's the first one, which goes to the article where you see the picture of that locust this guy's hand got in his hand. But then the second link after the word also, it's video actually showing the locust swarms with people in it, and that is scary. Click on that link if you want just to show the video. I think it comes up with the website. Yeah. Well, maybe it's just a still there. I thought we had a video on that one, but look at those people trapped in all those locusts. There you go. Yeah, that's it.
Huh.
Spooky stuff.
Locusts don't bite, do they, or sting, or I'm sorry, whatever?
No, actually, they taste pretty good if you roast them, apparently. But no, they go after the green things. They'll get green. I've heard reports in the past where a locust swarm would eat green-colored clothing hang out in a line to dry.
Really?
And they would eat that. Yeah, they're just kind of, oh, that's green, I'll eat it. They're crazy like that, but they're color driven.
Okay.
Yeah.
But again, biblical. Isn't this? This is kind of biblical to me.
Oh, it is. It is. Look, the plagues of Moses, in the Exodus, before Egypt let him go, a lot of those plagues are going to be replayed in the end times, and hail, and maybe even the sky going dark with ash from a volcano or two blowing up at really super volcanoes. There's just a lot of things that I think that happened in Moses' time in Egypt that will rehappen again in the revelation, the period of the tribulation period.
Okay.
Anyway, that's all right. Let me just get back over there. The United States is doing some tests, the Navy, with jamming GPS signals. Now, the reason I bring this up is out here where we live here in Colorado and Pueblo and that area around an Army base, Fort Carson, and around some naval research centers and things like that, and the Air Force and its Air Force Base. We've been having odd behavior in our handheld communication devices, like walkie-talkies. People in stores have been telling us about it, and computers have suddenly turned off and on. It certainly happened in our office, just some weird stuff where you didn't turn it on, it turns itself on. And we've had one instance of this like 5 years ago, I think it was, here in our house, where our garage doors started opening and closing all by themselves, which was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was apparently some high frequency testing being done at Fort Carson or somewhere around NORAD, right next to Fort Carson, just north of us. Now, what they're warning against in slide 45 is they're saying, look, guys, we're going to be doing some testing, and it's going to interfere with aircraft and vehicles that are using GPS, in Florida and up the coast a bit. So during these times, it'll be short periods of time, a few hours at a time. When you see this happening, just don't depend on your GPS and wait a couple hours and it'll go back to normal. So they're screwing with GPS signals. Now, GPS are broadcast from satellites down across the planet for you to pick up a certain frequency. That's what I'm kind of trying to figure out is, okay, why are they messing with that? Is it some sort of a message, a method to locally screw up the GPS coordinates over an army that you're fighting on the ground or in the air, where you can hit them and not yourself, so that their guided missiles and stuff can't hit you? Now, if that's the case, then something like this could be expanded over the whole United States, and missiles coming this way could be confused and caused a crash before they do their job. So I know they've been working on this for a couple of years, something like this, on an installation they put up in I think it was Bulgaria, I think. But anyway, we talked about it in the show a few years back. But this is a localized test, which I suspect means it's a tactical device as well as a strategic one if they build it to cover the whole United States, just to periodically block all incoming craft and aircraft and missiles and troops for that matter, so they can't guide themselves electronically. They have to do it the old-fashioned way. And with missiles and aircraft, the old-fashioned way doesn't work. You don't grab a map in the cockpit and say, this is the way I'm going to go anymore. You trust your instruments. So it can be a good thing, and certainly can be a nuisance when they're testing it around your house.
Yeah.
Yes.
Does that affect anything beyond GPS? For example, communications? Would that accept or impact communications adversely?
It could, as I recall in the article. Let me just see here. Let's see.
I've had a lot of people, well, more people than normal, send me communications saying, my cell phone is acting weird. It's not working. Certainly can't get a internet signal using Wi-Fi, and for intermittent periods. And a couple have sent me the map, that was up on the screen. So just curious as to.
Well, if you look at that article, there's a map there at the top showing the various frequency ranges, like 352 nanometers and 241 nanometers. Those are frequencies, wavelengths. So yes, it can affect it. Are they going to be doing it in the range of cell towers? If they're going to block GPS, then the answer is probably yes, because cell towers are relaying information to you from the GPS satellite to your cell phone.
True.
So things can get a bit busy out there when we're having. Sorry, that's nautical miles, not frequencies. 352 nautical miles difference. But the frequencies they're using are satellite frequencies that normally broadcast this stuff down to our cell towers and to our computers and things like that. And certainly, this could affect the internet and portions of it getting information, from these satellites.
Okay.
Yeah. At least if they're going to open and close our garage doors like that, they might do it in rhythm so that you can dance a jig with it or something, But no,
I, I can just envision that your garage door opening like 2 a.m. You hear it, and you think, well, when they go to Holly, can you check that out? No, Stan, you check it out. No, Holly, come on.
No,
That'd be the way.
as my grandfather, the sheriff, used to say, well, boy, just grab your hog leg and go out there and take care of business. Yeah, he was cool, Grandpa Tobe. There is another slide there. Where is that? That slide 43. Now, there's been a ruin stone, that they haven't been able to decode for like 1,200 years. It's a Viking, what they call a rock stone. I'd call it a ruin stone, but it's got inscriptions on it. And this stone, they have managed to decode it now, and you can see the pictures of it as you roll down the page there. See that old style of writing.
Mm-hmm.
And it alludes to a repeat of a little ice age. Now, I don't know how they would have known this. How did the Middle Americans, with their solar charts and solar things, like tracking time, how did they know all that in advance? But apparently they did, and maybe the Vikings had some way of telling it too. But for them to predict a little ice age, and I see something happening here where the temperature of the planet is increasing, but yet there are areas where it's decreasing, as I told you about localized effects of these magnetic field drifts. So on this stone, it's saying, we're going to have a repeat of the little ice age they had back then. I know that changes in the sun can do this periodically, dimming, and that might be what's going to happen here shortly. But it's just interesting that, with the Aztecs and the Mayans, all the data they had about the weather and about the nature of the earth and how cycles repeat and, disasters repeat. And then we find this stone there. Yeah. Anyway.
So that's 1,200 years old, roughly. Right.
Yeah.
So how would they know?
I don't know. It's in Sweden.
Yeah.
Where they found this. Obviously, you had Vikings in that area. Oh, by the way, Holly and I had Christmas presents to each other of getting our DNA checked out for, what our relatives were back several generations.
Right.
And we both come from primarily from, like Viking or Swedish or German, European, Norwegian stock.
Mm.
And she said, well, where's the Jewish part? I said, well, the Jewish part is what you're looking at. I said, the migrations of two tribes, Ephraim and Manasseh, went to Great Britain and United States, but they were also in Europe, spread all through there. And so you don't know what portion of your blood is Jewish, but I said, actually not Jewish, but Hebrew. Jewish means Judah and Benjamin, but Hebrew covers all the 13 tribes.
Wow. So I'm not going to invite you on my boat. Would I get one? and take over. No, very interesting. So you're both from, it would be Nordic countries, I guess.
Yeah, well, saying. I have 0.9% of Southwest Africa. Oh, boy. I said it.
There you go. Now it's a party.
Yeah, well, that's, African genes. They tell you that there's a small link to the beginning of man, the origins of man over in that area. This a little bit south of the Garden of Eden, but
well,
that's it. Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense, wouldn't it? Doesn't that kind of substantiate your location of the Garden of Eden in a large way?
Oh yeah, it does. And DNA migration patterns that they've performed, checking the mitochondria of women, they found what they call the mitochondrial Eve, where all the bloodlines of the world focus into a spot in Northeast Africa, called the Omo Valley. And that's where all genetic patterns on the planet now in humans originate, is that one spot, which is about, maybe 100 miles from where the Garden of Eden is. Down, if you went down from the Garden of Eden and went down the waterfall in the Great East African Rift down into Ethiopia and down to the Danakil Plains. Anyway, that's where the scientific proof shows that the DNA of all mankind came from it originally, which is kind of cool. But I had a guy write me a thing telling me, you're wrong about where the Garden of Eden was, because if you follow the Bible, it says, and he planted a garden in Eden to the east. Oh, so that meant, they said, that it was to India, where the Garden of Eden had to be in India. And of course, it's how you interpret the Hebrew, which says in Eden to the east. And that's why we have the terms, in various movies and books, east of Eden. Eden was a whole large area around Lake Victoria. And on the right side of it is where the garden was, on the eastern side of it. If you correct the axis of the planet back up to true from 23.4 degrees deviation, our orbit's tilting that much. If you straighten up the planet, then in the east of the land of Lake Victoria around there is where the Garden of Eden was. So in Eden to the east. So it sounds like you're in Eden and to the east of Eden, being inside the country or the land of Eden, not over into India, because they don't have the same axis. The north-south axis is off 23.4 degrees. Anyway, just I keep getting these people telling me, you're so wrong. The Garden of Eden couldn't be there. And I do try to address their arguments and see what they're saying. And so far, I haven't bought any of the locations that they say, because they don't go to any detail about all the rest of the pointers in the Bible to where the Garden of Eden was and is. Anyhow,
if you don't mind a minor digression here, how many others lay claim to having found or substantiating the location of the Garden of Eden besides yourself? I mean, a significant number of people, or just?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. The Chinese have one in their version up around the North Pole, I think. The Mormons in the United States put it up near Wisconsin or somewhere in that area. That was originally the Garden of Eden, and there are people that place it down where the South Pole is for some reason. I don't know why, but there are so many of them that I'm not really surprised, or shouldn't be. When I told the media I found the actual location of Garden of Eden, they kind of went, yeah, okay, you too? Well, good, thank you. But, I'm so positive in my mind. I've reconstructed the Earth, put the continents back where they were at the time before the Great Flood, when the asteroid fractured the planet, the crust of the planet. I've done all the homework, and it fits so many things together, even the legendary Atlantis and Lemuria, all that kind of stuff, all happened in that area. Kind of, if you pick the middle of the Indian Ocean and look to the left, there's the Garden of Eden. And if you look to the kind of 45 degrees, between west and north, there's Atlantis. And if you look on the other side, 9 degrees from that point, you have where all the little islands that formed the landmass that broke up and was Lemuria. All those things all happened in that area. So I'm happy with it, and people can argue all they want. When they can disprove all my arguments, then I'll listen.
There you go. Yeah, I like your research. And by the way, folks, Patreon, Stan Deyo's Patreon. There's a link right off of his website. Always good information there as well. So, okay.
Yeah, you can join that. As I understand it, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but when I put a link up on that Patreon site, like when I put a posting there and say, here's the address of a video I've just made, say on the Garden of Eden, does that stay there all the time, and people can join and then and go through the past notes or things and see that same link?
Well, I hope so. That's what I've done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then in that case, if you're interested in my presentation, the lecture I gave on the Garden of Eden and why I located it where it is, you can join my Patreon channel there. It's Stan Holly Deyo, and you'll see that my arguments there, and I've added a few things to that video, to that lecture, to make it clearer, to augment what I did when I originally produced the video. So there's that, and then there's a lecture that I gave on Atlantis, which is freebies on my YouTube channel. Both of those things are quite worth the view, I think, to solve a lot of the mysteries that people have pondered. great mysteries, and that's just kind of what Holly and I like to do, is research these ancient mysteries and solve them. So I think we have.
All right.
Let me get back over to the tall volcano.
Oh, yes.
I'm just trying to see if I've got a link that's pictures. Maybe I didn't link the article. Right. Right. Doesn't look like I did. Okay. These pictures here are of a volcano. I think that's Philippines, isn't it?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's on the Philippines. I see that there, right close to where Pinatubo was. That's in slide 51. You can see that. However, these photographs here are quite striking. They were from, say, slide 46 to 48. If you look at 46, which you've got up on the screen, I was staring at that, and I mean, imagine the force of this explosion shooting straight up. And it's not like curving off to the side early. It's like a rocket of ash and fire coming up out of this thing. And this is preliminary. They suspect in the next few days this could be a full-blown water phreatic type explosion and do great damage. Looking at that photo, I kind of thought, oh, here's something I can put out there to start a rumor mill. Up at the top of that cloud, you see these kind of white streaks that look like arms and a head. It could be a demon or something in the cloud things. But anyway, the real thing is the focus of this, like it's from a deep tube, and it's making such a focused beam of emissions of the gases and ash and chunks and stuff. The next picture, 47, is just one of many in videos you can see on the articles on the tall volcano, where lightning connects the cloud, the volcanic cloud, to the sky somewhere. It's like a cloud-to-cloud lightning flash. It builds up so much friction and charge on it, like a Van de Graaff generator, that you get these lightning strikes. And the video, of course, and some of the stills, like in slide 48, right next to it, show time exposures, these lightning discharges, some to Earth, some to the sky. I mean, that's impressive. That's just, I can't get over that. Big, a high voltage Tesla freak. I love these kind of shots. Isn't that just magnificent?
Wow.
Yeah. All right.
Now,
Yeah.
You mentioned that this could affect our growing climate and such if this blows big. Is that what you said, or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not as bad as, say, the Lake Taupo crater explosion in 238 AD or something like that, because that produced 3 days of total darkness, and it affected growing climates for years, centuries, until this stuff settles out of the atmosphere. It becomes like a reflector and absorber at the same time of sunlight and infrared, which doesn't let it get to the ground in quantities it should normally. Now, in slide 49, I was analyzing this volcano. Why was it so, violent? And in slide 49, you see where the volcano is, but it's on the junction of two fault lines, those red lines coming through there. Right in the middle is where two fault lines join. Now, there was water in this from a past eruption. There's water. You can see that kind of light blue color right around the junction there is water. It was a lake, and it filled after the last time this thing erupted. If you look at slide 50, you'll see the before and after this last explosion. On the left is water in the volcanic crater cone. To the right is after the eruption, should it stop. This is where the lake used to be, but it will have all been blown out. Now, I suspect what has happened here, because it's on a fault line join, is that the Earth's crust underneath the tall volcano there had begun to separate or fracture. Normally what they do is they separate and drop down a little bit, causing, if there's any water above it, the water to flow down into the hot magma pool. And depending upon how much and how quickly that happens, it forms a steam explosion, which can be absolutely incredible. And that starts the whole eruption process, and it brings the magma up, and you have this great cloud of stuff coming out of it. Why is this interesting? Well, New Zealand sits on two fault lines, moving one way and moving the other way. Two directions of movement underneath North Island, New Zealand, and the Taupo caldera. Now, the water on top of the caldera there is Lake Taupo, great for fishing, trout fishing, and stuff like that. When Holly and I were down there, I talked with the GNS, like our USGS people, and they said they prefer to have as much water in that lake as they can to hold the lid on the volcanic pressures underneath it. So they worry about the lake level dropping because the heavy water lid is starting to release the pressure on that dome that's formed under the water, and it will allow it to explode and become a super volcano, a really, really, really bad one, like Yellowstone. Now, the dream vision I had years ago, before I'd even known about New Zealand's Lake Taupo and that kind of stuff, I showed in the dream I saw a bunch of people wearing different kinds of clothes, military, civilian, that kind of stuff, old, young, going down inside Lake Taupo, not knowing what was happening. I couldn't reach them and talk to them, say, look, you're going down into a danger zone here, and that they were on the water there. And I read yesterday a paper that said, look, Lake Taupo, when the pressure above starts to push down on the cone, and the cone starts to weaken, what happens is the sticky magma underneath it coming up will suck down at the same time the weight of the lake is on it. And when the two combine, it will break that solid floor of Lake Taupo and release all that water, and that's a huge amount, down into a magma pool, which you can just see in your mind will suddenly just blow the heck out of North Island. And that's what I saw, is it sucked it down rather than going up. First, it had to go down and then blow up like that. So I'm wondering, if the tall volcanic situation here isn't kind of a warning, or a thing to watch, because the same kind of thing can happen on Lake Taupo, which would be catastrophic for New Zealand and for the world for some time to come.
Are we set to have multiple volcanoes erupt? Is that a possibility? Like in different areas?
Oh yeah. I mean, look primarily at plate tectonic borders and known fault lines that connect to plate tectonics. The tectonic plates. Another dream vision I had was years ago up in the air over the west coast of the United States, and I was kind of over Washington State area in the air looking down, and then kind of to the south toward Mexico, and I saw, I think it was 7, maybe 8 volcanoes at once, all erupting. We've got a volcano there. We've got Popocatépetl, which has been acting up in Mexico. That was the end volcano. And then we've got Mount St. Helens, and we've got the whole cascaded subduction zone where, magma is going to be released. And I saw that in a dream vision. And believe me, the dream vision I had for Lake Taupo and that eruption, I had never been there or heard of it or seen anything about it. I even saw the name of a motel sitting right on the edge of Lake Taupo that would be a signal for the heat increase just before the eruption. I went over with Holly later to do a lecture in New Zealand, in Auckland. And so we drove down there to see if there was a hotel like that. And there was. And it was the same name and same place. And inside of it I was shown the floor plan and where people would be sitting to avoid the rising hot water. So I know that my dream visions, they're different than a dream or, that kind of stuff. They are accurate. These kind of things, I know when they're accurate. And the other one is showing volcanoes all down the west coast of the United States. Take it. That's going to be accurate. It even showed me ash falls with steam and water in them, blocking all the roads from the west coast going east into Utah and even to Colorado, but places that people want to get to for safety. When things started to break up over there, they couldn't because the cars were sliding off the slippery roads cut through the mountains. So a lot of detail was given to me in that dream vision. So yes, there are going to be volcanoes, in my opinion, in many places across the planet where we hadn't seen them in a long time or ever. Because the planet's crust is expanding and cracking and allowing the magma, which is trying to get loose, to just suddenly release and erupt up like that. Some will be flows that will just flow over the crack and down and form lava blankets, in the terrain. Others will have violent or catastrophic eruptions.
Goodness. And in the last couple of minutes we've got, then there was that earthquake in Kansas.
4.6, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Something, yeah. In fact, they changed the magnitude, but yes.
Yeah. earthquakes in diverse places. I guess that means in places that they don't normally happen. And certainly you don't think of Kansas as that. You think of Kansas and the Wizard of Oz and tornadoes, but not earthquakes.
Yeah. Surprised me, I'll tell you.
Yeah. Well, just keep watching our homepage there, standeo.com. We put up the news there. Holly does the majority of that page. I sometimes contribute 2 or 3% of the stuff, but that's where anything that's happening that we're concerned about gets put up. And right now, volcanoes are of interest.
Yeah, good place on the internet to have bookmarked, and that's standeo.com. And I know Holly puts a lot of work into that, as you do. So
yeah.
All right.
Well, she's up at 4:30, 6 days a week, and by about 10 the next morning, she's got it all linked up and posted and whatever. So she's a trooper.
It's a big commitment, and you guys handle it well. Well, thank you, Stan. We're out of time.
Yes. Well, next week we'll pick up and see what's happened in the last 7 days.
Exactly. See if there are any more earthquakes in the continental United States or whatever. So,
right.
Or volcanoes.
Bye.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Folks, that'll do it for me tonight and Eric the Tech. Eric the Tech, you doing all right, brother?
Yep, doing good.
All right. Yeah. He's the man. Don't forget, folks, HagmanStore.com. HagmanStore.com. Coffee mugs. They go together. HagmanStore.com. Have a good night, everyone. Don't forget, Keith Hansen next.